Okay, so Assalamu alaikum rahmatullahi wa barakatuhu.
وعليكم السلام ورحمة الله وبركاته.
So is it working, guys? Guys in the comments, let me know if you guys can hear. Sound might be a bit dodgy today. I'm trying to get it sorted out as best as possible. So just let me know, inshallah, if it's working. So yeah. So if you guys can hear in the comments, please let us know. So, what's the topic about today, brother Altaf? I miss saying that, man. Brother Altaf. Join brother Altaf.
Assalamu alaikum wa rahmatullahi wa barakatuh.
Join brother Altaf.
I'm really excited to be on radio because that's the only way of communicating. When you're on video, but when you've got a podcast, it's all right. I think today's topic is spirituality, losing your Iman, and I think one other thing that I wanted to cover was Nav wrote a post today about armchair critics. So I wanted to explore that as well, if possible.
Armchair critics, huh? Sounds good, bro. Sounds good.
So that's what we're going to be discussing today.
Yeah.
If you guys can hear us on Facebook and LinkedIn, on YouTube, sorry, please do let us know, inshallah.
LinkedIn there,
we're live on Facebook as well.
So yeah, so can you guys hear? Yeah, it's fine. Okay, the guys are saying that it's fine. So hopefully.
When you say guys, you mean everyone listening, yeah, Mufti Sahib, just to clarify, yeah?
Yeah, man, come on. Guys means men and women as well in Answorth. Anyway.
Not just not used to it. He's from the south of Birmingham.
I know.
They have issues there.
Yeah, nah, bro.
We're east side. What's east side? We're the east side.
Yeah. So, topic is about spirituality. I think within 20 years, concept of spirituality has sort of like taken a different route now. Whereas, I mean, in the past, I don't know, maybe it was because before wasn't really that practicing in the 90s, and understanding of spirituality was more about as long as you listen to a talk, yeah, it was a bit spiritual. Now it seems as though spirituality seems to be something more, something you have to subscribe to. Yeah, not Netflix. But
When you say spirituality, most people will automatically intertwine it with Sufism.
Yeah. So what would you say spirituality is then, in that sense? If you had to describe to the non-Muslim, someone said to you spirituality, how would you describe it?
I'd say to the guy, come back to me in 10 minutes. No, I don't know. What would you say to me?
Spirituality, how would you explain connected to Allah? Would you say those things are spiritual? The actual things that connect you. Whereas religion would be the entire thing. The spiritual parts of it are the specific parts of that connect you. Some doesn't look impressed with that definition. Like, nah.
Yeah, actually.
What's the English definition of tasawwuf?
Easy. He jumped from spirituality to tasawwuf. I'm sure there were a few parts that you missed between that.
If I understand the English definition of tasawwuf, I think I'll be able to give spirituality is you just whatever you say.
You're just gonna use the same definition.
Pretty much, yeah. Change a few words around.
Yeah, I mean, it's how do you describe like tasawwuf? How do you describe like I want to know what you guys think of it.
No, it's not plagiarism. It's using good practice. You get it? You know what they say? Did you copy him? No, I didn't copy him. I was just benchmarking myself against him.
I'm not googling the answer right now.
So go and Google it. What is it then?
The quality of being concerned with the human spirit or soul as opposed to the material or physical things. Would you say that's correct, Musa?
So
your perspective.
The quality of?
I don't know, the quality of being concerned with human spirit or soul. So that's what spirituality means, is that basically the things that...
The only kind of thing that kind of like I sort of like seem to have an issue with this idea is, are we conflating the kind of like Christian understanding of spirituality or some other, kind of understanding of...
No, it's not even that definition. You're hearing.
Go on.
Spirituality is a broad concept with room for many perspectives. In general, it includes a sense of connection to something bigger than ourselves, and it typically involves a search for a meaning in life. As such, it is a universal human experience, something that touches us all.
It's a...
But if you do anything like that with something, if you get any word and you translate it into the English language,
Yeah.
you're gonna come up with that problem where you're gonna have the problem of where it's based from, or where the definition of the meaning comes from. It's like the same thing with like charity. In Islam, do you actually ever give a form of charity? Is sadaqah really charity? Is zakah really charity? When you ask those questions, and you can always kind of find a way that the definition doesn't actually hit exactly what you mean.
Yeah, exactly. That's what I'm thinking as well. That when we define spirituality, are we defining spirituality as any sort of like religious feeling that a person gets? Is that considered?
I think it's the things that take them away, or connect them with these really abject things that like people can't envisage. Like you just said, I connect you with your spirit.
Metaphysical, more metaphysical, you're saying.
Yeah. Well, but if you said it's metaphysical to somebody, they'd be like, yeah, but how do you actually prove that it happens?
Yeah.
I think it's just a feeling in it.
Yeah. So I think this idea. So for the average person, when someone wants to say, I want to get into spirituality, how is that like different from a person saying that I just want to practice Islam? Is it the same thing?
Okay.
So spirituality is a component of Islam, but it's like it encompasses spirituality if you wanted to follow Islam properly.
I've got something else here.
Go on.
In Islamic literature, spirituality means awareness of the origin of the universe, worshipping God, seeking the satisfaction of God, humility and submission, and trust which man demonstrates in all form of his actions. In this way, an individual's relationship with Allah is his focal point of Islamic spirituality. Sorry, I said read more and it just went Pope. But yeah.
Okay,
that was actually a half decent definition.
That's not a bad definition, to be fair. But I think kind of like when you then connect that with something like lots of young people that are losing their faith at this moment in time, right? And older people as well. I don't think it's just young people. I think it's like all across the range, to be honest, where people are, tired of having religion given to them as a set of rules, a set of don't do's.
Yeah.
And they're inclined to spirituality, but they're just not inclined to man's interpretation of some of those rules that we're meant to follow. So they don't have an issue with following rules generally. They just have an issue with following too many rules.
Yeah, I get what you're saying. So okay. So let's kind of draw some sort of like understanding. So we all know what we're talking about. By the way, is the sound okay now? I did try to sort it out. So if in the comments, if you can just put in the comments if the sound's better. So see, the issue we have today is we seem to have like two extremes. One extreme is where you have this idea that the only way that you can experience Islam is if you totally sort of like take the metaphysical sort of approach, where you kind of detach yourself from the materialistic aspect of Islam. Yeah? And it's just a pure connection with certain individuals or certain organizations, and you're doing this kind of a routine sort of like, you can say maybe some sort of a regime that you're following. Yeah? And so it's more of a, you can say it's more inclined towards maybe following some spiritual instructions given to you by someone, which kind of makes you feel this ambience, spiritual ambience. That's one extreme. And then you got the other extreme, which is more of no spirituality. There is no such concept of spirituality in Islam. Islam is all just rational. Like they will rationalize every single thing in Islam to such an extent that Islam just simply seems to be another way of life, but it's just a way of life that makes sense. There's no like, existential sort of like aspect to Islam. There's no, idea that you have to feel this buzz or go to a talk or have a like, sit with some scholars or something or get this kind of like, I don't know. Do you kind of get that? That's what I get from my understanding of reading certain individuals' tweets and Facebook posts. You kind of see that there's a kind of like clash between these two. Yeah. I don't know.
Yeah, you do. You do see the clash between the two things, and I think it kind of obviously it exists as well. But I don't know, Mufsab, I kind of like, when you're like when people are trying to understand like it in real terms, like what does it actually mean in real terms? I think that's where it becomes difficult. So it's like if I said to Nav, give me examples of spirituality and stuff, that would be, I think, more difficult for him to kind of like really get to.
Yeah. So okay, what would you then, Altaf, say? What's an example of spirituality for you?
I think spirituality is that kind of like where you're really thinking about, the things that where you're really connected with the act that you're doing, or the thing that you're just about to do. And so, like, say for instance, something like salah, spirituality for me would be the thought that takes place before salah, that this could be your last salah, that that you need to be focused because life is short, life is temporary. Eternity is vast, and just those reflections before you enter the moment of salah, so that you're focused on connecting.
So is it more down to an emotional state?
Yeah, I think it is. I think it's about a conscious state.
Okay, right. So, the only kind of issue that I have in my mind with these kind of things is, let's say a Hindu says, I'm in a spiritual. Like as a Hindu person says, I'm in a spiritual state. So is a spiritual state something that all religions share? An emotional attachment someone has to a certain part of their religion?
Yeah, I think so. I think everybody can have their spirituality in it. People have spirituality to no faith as well in it sometimes.
But in that case, then spirituality wouldn't really determine whether you are following Islam or not.
No, it wouldn't.
So it's not something intrinsic to being a
It
Muslim.
depends on it in your definition. If you define spirituality as that search for peace, then every faith has that like concern or has that opinion that true peace can only be found within that faith.
Yeah.
Sometimes, or true serenity can only be found within that faith.
Okay,
so if you kind of
serenity.
subscribe to that definition of it, then it's a bit more difficult, isn't it?
Yeah, serenity is actually a good word.
Sorry, Mufti. How do you differentiate between spirituality and mysticism?
Oh, where was that from, bro?
Mysticism.
Yeah, okay. Mysticism, is it mysticism? I don't understand. What is mysticism? Is it something which is like an abstract sort of like structure that people have kind of come out with to try and explain certain states? What is it?
I have no idea. I can Google it if you like.
Yeah,
I've got to Google it. Mysticism.
because a lot of these statements, I personally think it's just people trying to define themselves, define it in their own way. Right? So like in the comments, some people are saying purifying the heart is spirituality. Some are saying it's zuhud. Okay.
My brother Muhammad Malik is on Facebook. He's saying it's a connection with the unseen. He's asking a question.
Connection with the unseen. I like that one. Who said that?
Muhammad Malik on Facebook.
Yeah, you know what? That's something that actually sounds something. Because that seems. So the way probably I'm looking at it, maybe you might disagree with me, is I'm trying to look at it in a way that Islam is unique to. Yeah, connecting with the unseen. Alaikum rahmatullahi wa barakatuhu.
Easy.
Wa alaikum salam.
Wa alaikum salam. Back on again.
Okay, mysticism.
Bit of spirituality there, bro.
Belief that the union with or absorption into the deity or the absolute or the spiritual apprehension of knowledge inaccessible to the intellect may be attained through contemplation and self-surrender.
So what was that about the intellect? It's inaccessible to the intellect.
Yeah.
So then how do you understand it?
Okay, another word from mysticism is vague or ill-defined religious or spiritual belief, especially as associated with the belief in the occult. So, definitely an atheist wrote the second description.
I think
I'm
a
not
lot
sure.
of people are struggling with the idea of what is spiritual. Because like nowadays, you actually have people who don't follow any, ascribe to any sort of like structured religion, and they just say they're spiritual. They feel spiritual. They go to a certain restaurant, and they go, it has a spiritual like ambience.
Maybe spiritually a bit too much.
No, in fact,
No,
actually,
people might actually feel that way when they go somewhere. So like,
Yeah.
just say you go to a historical site.
yeah.
Well, so I'm sure, obviously, living in Handsworth, you've seen a lot of people feeling spiritual after hitting the blunt a few times.
Astaghfirullah. I've got better things to look at, my brother. I've got better things
Oh, sorry.
to look at.
Sorry. What do you look at when
He
you're in
talks.
Handsworth?
He speaks about like Handsworth and North Birmingham, right? Like it's some ghetto compared to the south of Birmingham.
I know.
We've been down to the south of Birmingham as well. We visit the airport often enough.
We eat there, bro.
We do sugar on the way back when we're driving home.
It was a dig, yeah. It was a dig because obviously Mufti Saab's moved to the like more closer to you now, innit, bro? The high
The
Makkah,
burbs.
the verbs.
The burbs. Mufti Saab moved to the burbs nowadays.
Mufti Saab's done his time. He's grown his wings enough now. They can
All I
fly
can
to
say
the
is
higher
these
part of the
two.
mountain.
All I can say is these two over here, yeah. The
Yeah,
two
mashallah.
spiritual noors, bro.
Mufti Saab's moved from the block.
Oh, by the way, guess what I've got over here? What I do basically is, and let me show you guys. You see this? This is my camera. You know what I've done? I actually aim it at the wall. You aim it at the wall to get a better reflection on your face. I didn't tell you that, did I?
So you don't actually have noor on your face. It's just all these lights.
No, that's the spiritual, bro. That's the spiritual vague. What was it? That was the
he has no noors. He's just an MUA, bro, in disguise.
Maybe he's born with it. Maybe he's Maybelline.
Nah, I'm telling you, you're watching too much adverts, man.
Because I'm worth it.
Allah. True. Everyone's worth it, man. Everyone's worth it. Come on.
Allah.
You know, so what was I saying? So there's a guy basically I saw on YouTube once here. And this guy, he doesn't believe in God. The whole system of God doesn't believe in.
Yeah.
And he basically, he smokes marijuana.
Oh, surprise, surprise.
And he believes he goes into a spiritual state, a higher spiritual state, when he kind of does this yoga sort of practice. And he also smokes marijuana. But he says you have to have a control of how you do it. It's like a balance you strike. And you can go into a... And that's where I think a lot of people seem to kind of get the line blurred Islamically as something being part of Islam. Like getting close to Allah doesn't necessarily mean you have to feel emotional when you listen to a talk. That's what I'm saying. Because I know people who would listen to, you know, some classical music and become very emotional. Or they might watch a movie, a very sad movie, you know, a certain sad movie where there's a guy and he loves a woman and they're on a ship and that ship sinks. Yeah. And, you know...
What movie is that?
Moist people.
We'll just have to release this soon. No. Jack!
You actually know these people, Mufti Saab. I hope you disassociate with these people.
Obviously, I don't know
That
anyone.
they cry over these films.
I hardly know anyone.
It's too funny, guys, but...
Yeah,
I
so...
know what you mean.
So basically, it's like... I think there is a problem with there was a guy I remember once, you know, I don't know, you guys might not know him, but he basically became a bit mentally unwell, and he actually considered himself at one point to be like in a more correct like orientation of Islam. And the guy basically, he would like kind of like smoke, and he would do these kind of things, and then he would do this kind of breathing practices and all that. And, you know, some of these can actually have like detrimental effects on your brain, because at the end of the day, any exercise you're doing, anything that's controlling your breathing and everything can have an effect on your mind, right? And it can make you feel as though you are in a spiritual mode, where in reality you might not be in a spiritual mode. It's just the byproducts of, you know, doing some sort of like breathing exercises. Yeah, and maybe, you know, inhaling certain chemicals.
So could could you be moved to something like a spectrum, right? So you've got like this your normal life here, right? Then you've got this stage in the middle, right, where you're stopping doing things in your normal life and you're taking a moment out to contemplate. And then there's another level of spirituality here is where you're actually connecting with Allah. So you can be moving across that spectrum and feeling more and more spiritual as you move across the spectrum.
Yeah.
Because you're taking something out and you're connecting with something a little bit more deeper. But it's only when you then, you know, as Muslims, you would believe that it's only when you connect with Allah, the everlasting, that you understand that true element of spirituality. That's what it comes down to it. That, you know, everything else
Yeah.
in existence.
Yeah. That's it. That's it.
This is definitely going to be a discussion between you two because I don't consider myself as too much of a spiritual person, to be honest with you.
But you know,
for
so
me-
wait, mate. But what do you understand spirituality to be? What does spirituality
thing.
mean to you and me?
Okay.
S is for the. Remember that? Remember that school one?
My definition of spirituality.
Harvest, HARVEST.
Yeah.
You had to remember that one.
I'd say if Allah's ordained something for me and I actually genuinely start loving or hating something for the sake of Allah, I'd consider that to be spirituality. But majority of the Muslims in general, they'll associate spirituality with maybe some sort of kind of, hypnosis or trance-like feeling. You understand what I'm trying to say? Like, that doesn't really sit well with me.
And that's fine. I agree with you that.
Yeah.
I agree with you. So
I
this.
think, according to most people's understanding and definition of the word, then I don't consider myself spiritual. But in my own understanding of how a Muslim should be spiritual, or I'd say tawakkul is real spirituality. That's how I'd define it.
I think spirituality for me is kind of like you got to be hyper conscious and that you're hyper aware of Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala in all of your actions and activities, and that's what makes you spiritual, isn't it? Yep, exactly.
Would you agree to some extent?
Yeah. I totally agree. These ideas that basically the ideas that the Quran has given us, sabr, having sabr, is spirituality. In fact, you know, there was a guy who did a lot of charity work here abroad, and I remember meeting him once in the UK. And that guy, I mean, I don't know how many tahajjud the guy prays here, but I don't know how many guys, how many fasts he fasts, and how many people he's helped, or whatever. But the guy going out of his way and supporting people and going and taking, you know, funds from here or food or supplies and giving it to people over there, to me that seems one of the greatest spirituality acts you can ever do. As in, I'm looking at the term spirituality as being something which connects you to Allah, like that brothers on Facebook were saying. I think that is a very good way of looking at it, and that kind of like gives us the balance, in trying to understand what we're supposed to do as a Muslim, rather than trying to get into this kind of like background nasheed state. Yeah, the background nasheed state.
Did you see that Donald Trump one? Did you see the Donald Trump nasheed one? That was hilarious. You know that talk that he did recently about leaving the Middle East and all of this kind of stuff, and we should just leave them to themselves. Somebody got on one of those nasheeds and stuck it in the background.
Fit perfectly.
like it was an Islamic talk or something.
You know, the guy's a funny guy, man. You know, I don't know if he intends to be funny, but he just gives, a few chuckles here and there.
Yeah, a bunch of us, like, we appreciate the guy. Like, I remember, when the whole corona, when he was doing the announcements, I'd actually stay up to watch him. But for all reasons, like, don't get me wrong, like, obviously we care for the welfare of the world and that, but for me it was just entertainment. I just wanted to see him. The new thing that, like, you remember what happened with the Asian lady? He's like, why don't you ask China then? Like,
he was getting a bit. He was getting really, 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 really short with everybody at that stage, because he just didn't have any answers.
You know, he's basically not politically correct.
He's a legend.
That's what he is. He's not politically correct, and he just says whatever
you take the political out, Mufti Salman, that statement would hold true. He's not correct. He's not a young guy. I know, like, the hair and everything kind of puts you off a little bit. But he just reminds me of an old uncle.
A lot of people, they conflate the term Sufism with this like vague idea of what spirituality is. I think it's a very difficult way. I mean, if you ask the average person today, what is Sufism? Does Sufism mean you have to have a particular sheikh that you have to subscribe to? Does Sufism mean that you have to, listen to the stories of pious individuals in the past and try to emulate them? Does Sufism mean that you have to be aware of Allah in your day-to-day activities? So, I
But
mean,
those people that define it like that, they've got like a very clear understanding of what they mean in it. They mean this type of worship, that type of worship, doing this and doing that. That's what they mean by Sufism, and they will tell you that as well in it. Like when you interrogate them, they will come out with it. It's not like they're confusing the definition. It's they're telling you exactly what it is.
Some people get defensive as well if you actually ask them about Sufism. First thing, but Salahuddin Ayyubi was a Sufi. I was like, okay, bro. Let's take 10 steps back now, please. I'm just asking you what it means. I'm not telling
but
you.
I gotta stop you there. Doesn't everyone do that? Anyone who's kind of very like insecure about their position will straight away respond in that manner.
Possibly, yeah.
I feel anyone who is whatever field or area in Islamic sort of like I don't know what you call it, orientation they affiliate to, they kind of have this. So okay, let me. In the past, I did a bit of reading regarding this idea of like we have something which is known as, let's say, structured Sufism. Yeah, structured tasawwuf. Structured tasawwuf is like structured fiqh, basically. It's like if you look in the time of the Prophet ﷺ, you don't seem to find there being these kind of rules, apart from the general concepts in Islam, like pray salat, do it like this, fast, do it like this, do hajj, do it like this. But as for like individual sort of like we can say spiritual journey, there didn't seem to be this kind of list of things that you have to do. You have to wear an imama in this way. Your length of your dress has to be this long. You have to. Because I remember in Pakistan, I went to this place once. It was I had to visit this scholar, and when the place that I went to was a place by Hakim Akhtar. I don't know if you heard of Hakim Akhtar. Yeah, Hakim Akhtar. He's a famous.
You got Nasheed on in the background, Naveed.
No, it's Mufti's on. When he's speaking, I just felt spiritual. That's where the sound is coming from.
La, la, la.
I just heard something. I was like, is that him doing the Nasheed in the background? Must have been him, innit?
Yeah, so I went to this place, and this place basically, they had on the floor, the carpet of the masjid, white cloths. Like everything was white. So clearly, white was a key part of their, like affiliation to that sheikh. And then they had these like 6 points that they had to kind of like adhere to. Right? One was like the size of their beard has to be a certain length. One is that their trousers had to be above their ankles. One was they had to wear a certain design hat. Right? So a lot of these kind of things.
This is what this podcast has been about all this time. He finally, after 20 episodes, got to the 6 points.
Bingo! You got me.
And now we have taken over.
मेरे प्यारे भाइयों, यहाँ ईमान और यकीन की बात होने वाली है.
तशरीफ रखिए.
Muftab, somebody's asking a question online on your YouTube. Have you had a look at that? I think there's a sister who wants to ask some questions. Do you have an opportunity for her to ask questions?
Yeah, what is it?
I don't know. She's just saying she's having lots of doubts around Islam and stuff.
Okay. Oh, Brother Isa is always having doubts and always saying, Isa. Yeah. He's every time he's coming on. Isa, may Allah give you shifa, bro. The number of times you said you want to commit suicide on my channel, you've been saying that for the past 2 years, bro. No offense to you, yeah. There's no offense, to people. But if you're gonna keep saying it,
you should just stop commenting on Mufti Saab's page and
I know. I mean,
and seek proper help because Mufti.
Yeah, I keep saying to Brother Isa, I say to him, look, go to a doctor. If you really have suicidal thoughts, we can't solve that. You need to speak to a doctor about these kind of things, and it's a serious thing. So it's not it's like I'm not joking about it. It's not making a joke out of these kind of things. These are things people, depression. I don't have the solutions to this, and I don't think Brother Altaf and Naveed has solutions. They're not experienced in that field. You need to speak to doctors. You need to speak to medical experts, psychologists, people who are, in this field. right? Because wallahi, without a doubt, I would never like to see anyone commit suicide, right? Whether it's a member of my family or neighbors or anyone, even my enemy. End of the day, I can give you advice based upon what my experience and training is. So anyone who does have, you have to go and seek, and Anyway, so back to the issue.
So Musab, you're talking about 6 points.
Yeah, so basically when we went there and then I realized that you see what happens is when you have structured tasawwuf, structured spirituality, it seems to be something which plays a role, but it's not, it's a means to get to an end. It's not meant to be the ultimate goal, right? And this is what happened in the time of the Sahaba. After the time of the Sahaba, you had people who used to like deliberately try to stay up for tahajjud. And what they used to have was they used to have like a bowl of water, and every time they used to put their hand over it, every time they felt drowsy, the hand would fall in the water, they'd wake up. Or they'd put their hand on top of a flame. And every time they felt drowsy, they'd, Now you see, that isn't something Islamic in per se. Yeah? But if a person wanted to, let's say a person wanted to, maybe say to a friend or something or someone that, look, I'm going to try to stay awake. If I go to sleep, wake me up. I want to do ibadah. That's fine per se. But then the problem with that goes into the realm of when a person kind of like sees themselves as being superior in their acts of worship or their approach in Islam to someone else because they've adopted this sort of like structured way of worshipping Allah. Like, for example, in the morning, you do this, and in the evening, you do this, and, in the afternoon, you do this, and then you do it in this particular way, and you get these results. And I've seen people who do kind of like follow strict regimes. They got to do a certain number of dhikr in the morning, certain number of dhikr in the evening. They've got a certain number of ayats they got to read. They have to sit with their sheikh every once a week or twice a week, whatever. Right? These kind of like things.
Is that discipline?
Sorry to interrupt you.
Yeah.
And sorry to play the devil's advocate, but isn't that institutionalized version of these practices in a structured manner, doesn't that come under the term bid'ah?
Astaghfirullah, my brother. I had to jump in there. I had to say that here.
I thought you were going to say the brother has asked a very good question. I thought you were going to go there.
This is his Sean impression.
Yeah, so I mean, you're right. I mean, it does like kind of like veer into that kind of like area, and it become a bit dubious.
But majority of the people that might practice this particular act would say that there's a thing called bid'ah hasana. Am I correct in saying that?
Bid'ah hasana doesn't mean that it's like an innovation which is allowed. It doesn't mean any innovation is allowed in Islam.
No, of course. But would that be the justification for an act like this?
Yeah. So for example, the argument would be as long as you don't believe this particular act to be part of Islam.
Yeah.
Yeah. It's like, for example, let's say you do exercise in the morning. You don't believe exercise in the morning is part of Islam. Your 2 kilometer jog, whatever. Yeah. Then it's fine.
Mm.
Yeah, but you're right. Well, Altaf was saying that this structured way of like kind of like doing things, it just becomes like what was it? It's like someone who goes gym a lot. They go to the gym, they get this buzz, they get this feeling, nice feeling, and then if you stop going to the gym, you feel bad inside. Yeah, you feel down.
The question is, I think the people find the question is, Mufti, is that having a timetable and sticking to it religiously. The pun. But if you stick to your timetable religiously, does that mean that you're making it part of religion, or is it just tarteeb? Like, is that just your your daily setup? That's how you get around everything.
Yeah, I don't know. I mean, if someone feels that if they're told how to in their day structure their entire day, and they can get closer to Allah, then why not? Like if for example you got two guys, one guy wants to lose weight but he wants to do his own way, own research and do his own kind of style, and one guy wants to go to an expert and say to the expert, look, I want you to plan my whole routine, my whole diet, everything, and I want to lose weight. Yeah, which one would you go for? Clearly the guy, So the people who are coming out with these kind of structured ways of tasawwuf, they're not per se wrong. They're not wrong. For many people it works, and it works excellently.
But Mufti Saab, sorry to interrupt you again, but the guy he'd go to advice for, 9 times out of 10, this guy would be a specialist in that field, correct?
Yeah.
However, for this particular spiritual aspect or this routine or guidelines, is there any way of being an expert, and is he even recognized in Islam, like mainstream Islam?
Yeah.
You understand what I mean, Mufti Sahib?
Yeah.
Is there accreditation to it, or does
Yeah,
somebody...
so the accreditation would be like what they call the idea of ijaza. Like, for example, apprenticeship. It's like apprenticeship, basically. It's an apprenticeship model. You stay with someone for a long time. The expert would say, after a while, say, you know what, I'm happy with you teaching other people this as well. So it would be this kind of like, personal sort of understanding.
Musab, isn't accredited? Isn't like I'm going to say something that might be controversial in it. So take a notice of what minute it's on and enough. But I was going to say, isn't it really just about followership? Like, you can have all the ijazas in the world that you want, right? But if nobody comes to you or nobody follows you, right? You're great, you're spiritual, but you're not really got a following. So isn't it really about people that have a following that are in that position, rightly or wrongly?
Yeah.
You may agree, you may disagree, but they're the ones that have the following.
Yeah.
Sometimes, like, you look at somebody like, there's that guy that, that would that cures people by blowing on them, right, over the internet. There's that guy. He has a massive following, right? And you can say, the people that follow him are X, Y, Z, X, Y, Z, X, Y, Z. You can say that as much as we want, and we can all say that as much as we want. However, at the end of the day, it's their free choice that they're following him, right? And so he has a following.
Can I ask a question, Mufti Sahib?
Okay, so all right. Sorry for the Naveed. I think you're conflating subscribers to an individual and between the function of an individual. Like, if you have a doctor, for instance, he might be an expert and he's given accreditation by his university that he graduated from. So that guy might have lots of people that kind of go to him for treatment, right? But it doesn't necessarily mean that this guy, just because he's got a large, a clientele or...
A leader without a following is just a man on a walk.
Yeah.
Yeah, but so he's not got anybody that's actually listening or subscribing or coming to him. It's like me setting up my YouTube channel with I can have the most amazing content on there. I might even have the most amazing permissions as well. But if nobody's coming to view it or watch it, right, what impact am I having?
Right, so let's rephrase that. Let's rephrase it. A doctor who graduates, is his aim to be able to treat as much people in the world as he wants, as he can? Or is he simply there to fill in a vacuum?
Say that again, sorry, Musa.
So, for example, if a doctor graduates from university, is his aim to treat as many people as he can in the world, or is he simply just fulfilling a function in the society?
I think that you'd get people that come from that fall into both of them, and there'd be some that really want to be doctors, right? That really want to help as many people as possible, and they go or they work within health services across the world, or they go to third world countries. And you get some of them who just see it as a profession, and they've just gone through the process because that's what it is. That's the way they go through the process. And you get those kind of GPs that don't practice anymore, and those doctors that don't practice anymore because it's not their thing.
Yes, I think spirituality originally seems to have started like that. In fact, Umar radiallahu anhu. Let me tell you something about Umar. Umar, when he was the Khalifa, he prohibited many Sahaba, like the senior Sahaba, from leaving Medina. That many of them wanted to leave and migrate to other cities. He prohibited them. Like famous about Ibn Mas'ud, he didn't want him to. So the historians, they argue, why did Umar prevent Sahaba from traveling back? Like, there's no restriction. So one of the arguments, there's two arguments that I've found. One of the arguments is basically he wanted them to stay close so that if any new issue in Islam turned up and he didn't have an answer, at least he'd have people who were experts that he could consult with. The second is interesting. This is mentioned by Imam Tabari. He mentions it. He says the reason he didn't want was because Umar radiallahu knew that because the Sahaba, a virtue of being companions of the Prophet ﷺ, automatically would have people flocking to them. Would automatically. So I get what you're saying. Is that if a certain person has been accreditation by a famous individual as being like his representative, then you ought to, like, for example, I don't know who's famous in the world at the moment, some famous tech whiz and he all of a sudden says, right, this is my new guy now, right?
Yeah.
Elon Musk says, everything I know, this guy knows, right? Automatically now, he's going to get so many followers on Twitter, on Facebook, on social media, right? Just by
Would
simply...
Musab, would Umar radiallahu anhu, would he have actually said that, or how would have Tabari recorded that? Is that he's understanding of the situation, or would Umar radiallahu anhu have actually said that?
Yeah, reports have been transmitted about that.
Okay.
Yeah, that reports were transmitted that he didn't, because his reports have actually mentioned this. He says, I know what's going to happen when you go to places, people are going to put you up. And he saw this with some companions, that their students wouldn't let them walk on the ground. They're like, let them travel, on the mountain. They would sacrifice their own. But see, this brings the next issue, which is, if a person is automatically now going to qualify, whether he consciously knows it or not, to become like in the limelight and gain popularity, there's going to be illnesses that he's going to be faced with now. There's going to be like tests in his life that he's going to be faced with that he has to now be prepared for. Is he prepared for this? Does that make sense? Like, you get these kind of like, like Macaulay Culkin and these kind of like young actors who all of a sudden gain popularity overnight. And then they had really bad mental, impact on them. So what can happen nowadays is that when certain individuals become very famous online and people start flocking to them and asking them questions, you got to kind of ask yourself, am I trained to be able to deal with this popularity? I need mentorship. I need like a new type of mentorship to understand how to deal with these situations. Otherwise, it can turn into like the wolf in sheep's wool. Is that what it is?
I thought you were gonna say the wolf on
Wall Street.
Wall Street. I was about to say, I was like, okay, Musab, that was a bit of a jump in spirituality.
Allah, I'm trying to bring everything into it here, guys. All the kind of
bringing stockbroking into it.
I've got one question that leads to another question.
Go on.
Okay, you used the example of a doctor, let's just say, earlier. Now, what if someone was to argue, that someone being me, basically, the doctor has a basis, and forgive the... Okay, I'm just going to be straight up and say it. The doctor has a set of guidelines that he has to follow to get the accreditation, He has a dalil, basically, that he has to follow. And is there any textual evidence for this level of spirituality? Is there any form of narration that we know of where people didn't give a political bay'ah but give merely a spiritual bay'ah in Islam? From the first three generations.
Okay,
Is there
so
such things that exist?
see,
Or am I being too
like
harsh
if
here?
someone was to argue that how did the Sahaba gain the term Sahaba? How did they gain that title Sahaba? It was just in the company, isn't it? So being in the company of someone clearly will qualify you for something. Whether it's something that can be like it can be tangible, it can be detected, or it's something that can't be detected. So clearly there is something that if you stay in the company of someone, it is recognized as being, yes, someone might argue, well, maybe the Prophet ﷺ is considered to be different in that sense, right? Because he is the primary source of the...
So the qualification, but Musab, you're not saying the qualifications by association, you're saying the qualifications based on knowledge and the transfer of knowledge to those that were closest to the Prophet ﷺ.
Yeah. So knowledge in the sense, if there's a guy who is spiritually trained, as in he knows exactly, like when I think of a guy who is a mentor spiritually, I think of a guy who would be like one of those, those kind of like those personal sort of like trainers, personal like spiritual, what do they call them? Personal managers. Yeah. Those kind of guys. Yeah, so you go through any sort of situation in life and they'll give you tips of how to overcome problems, how to kind of like boost your popularity.
Life coach.
Life coach. It's like a life coach.
That Robinson guy.
Yeah, him.
Yeah, Tommy Robinson, excellent life coach.
You listen to Tommy Robinson, and he sounds exactly like, he just has to say a few inshallahs and mashallahs, and the guy sounds exactly like an Islamic speaker.
Yeah.
Very positive, very kind of like focused on what he wants. He knows, what not to do. He knows how to get the audience. It's just a skill, isn't it? An art.
Tommy, just say you shahada, man. Make it easy for everyone.
All Tommies, yeah, all Tommies.
I think when it comes to those ones, there was I was speaking once to a friend who was like a specialist in hypnosis, especially like language hypnosis or like neuro-linguistic programming and looking at those kind of things. And it's not Tommy Robinson, it's Tony Robinson.
Tony Robinson, yes, Tony.
So if you're making dua for Tommy, I'm sure that will get snipped and used on the Twitter
Allah.
one day.
Maybe this is a way for Tommy Robinson to get the hidayah as well.
Yeah, and there's another Muslim organization that already tried that one. In terms of
Muslim organization.
there was so when I was speaking about Tony Robinson, I was speaking to somebody who was like a specialist in hypnosis and language hypnosis, and he was saying that he did neuro-linguistic programming, and then he kind of like went into some other depth, some crazy depth level, and he was talking about how these guys would use the same concept of spirituality, of that positive reinforcement, of the reinforcement of an idea. So they would say the chanting, right? Because they do that chanting in it. I will be awesome or something like that. Like you stand in the mirror and say that. Now I know you do that at home, but like in the morning, I'm awesome or whatever, right? They would say that that dhikr that they would do when they stand and they think is based upon the same thing. Is that positive reinforcement and the chanting of it as well. So he said there was something there in the rhythm and the melody of it.
Yeah, definitely.
Well, not the melody, but the rhythm of
definitely.
it.
And that's why early on in the podcast when I said to you, why can't, for example, a cult, if a cult like, David, what was that guy's name, the Waco incident, he kind of like, he basically must have had some sort of like a very intelligent guy, because if you got people who are following you outside of social media, you got to be clever. You can't be a dumb person. So you got to know exactly what to say to people, how to say to people, how to get them. I know the other day I was actually thinking to myself, what if like there is a list of things to teach people of how to like what's the word, to kind of how to dupe people, right? So for example, like how to become.
There's a few entrepreneur networks out there that were guilty of that thing.
I think these are the kind of things that you got to be very careful, because nowadays when you hear about scholars or famous speakers who kind of like get caught in doing things that they're not supposed to be doing publicly, and then you get the question that comes to people's minds and has a big impact on their faith. Yeah, we're talking about losing a faith. Is that the idea is, how can someone so spiritual? That's what they think. How can someone who is such a leader of spirituality and gives so many talks and has this, how can he get involved in this kind of acts? Like they can't understand, like it was working so well for me, so-called working for me. But now all of a sudden I've heard this about this individual, in a particular sheikh. It has a big, people have nervous breakdowns.
But that's that perfection hunting in it. So I remember I was with one of my friends, like from the homeless project, and we were discussing this. And he was like, I don't feel comfortable with sheikhs. And we went through this whole conversation around this. Like, he was like, I don't feel comfortable with sheikhs. And, I can't find a proper, true scholar. And this guy was like in his mid-40s, right? And he goes, I can't find a true sheikh.
Wait a minute. Okay. Let me check in one of my books. I'm sure I've got...
He goes, I can't find a true sheikh because, they all have their issues. And, whenever I get close or I learn about one, I find something that disappoints me. So I just asked him, like, we were just sitting down having this question. I said, so what are you looking for? I said, from the sounds of it, what you're looking for is a modern day Prophet ﷺ, and if you're looking for perfection, like if you're going to accept humans and that we're all humans and all have flaws, right, then you have to lower your expectations, and they're going to have a flaw in them as people. I said, what you just have to do is like take the good and leave whatever else is there in it. Otherwise, you're trying to look for angels, or you're looking for something even more, and you're looking for something else. And he was like, he thought about it for a few minutes, and he was like, yeah, but I still can't find somebody that I connect with. I said, you keep picking the flaws out of them, and you're not going to find anybody.
Yeah, you're right.
Because you always, when you get close to a scholar, you get close to anybody, to be honest, right? You start to see things that you'd be like,
okay. Is that because you had envisaged in your mind a specific sort of like, template for that scholar that you thought that he should live by? and then when you found out that he doesn't live by this template that you had imagined in your head, and it puts you off.
Yeah, that's what that person would have said. For me, it's like I would be aware of that, so I would not try to get ever too close to a scholar. Like, you'd be close to ulama, but you wouldn't be like overly close, because you don't want to know too much.
But I would do the opposite though. I think because maybe I've studied with a lot of my teachers, I found the closer I used to get to my teacher, knowing him, I would find that it would make me feel like Islam is more like in tune. It's like more in line with a natural sort of way of interaction with society. Like this kind of approach.
Yeah.
If you kind of have like an approach, like this tends to happen when you got this big sheikh. When you like first time you're sitting with a sheikh and eating with a sheikh, like the one that you used to big up all the time, and you don't know what question to ask him, and you kind of ask him the most stupidest kind of question out there. Sheikh,
What question did you ask?
He said, Sheikh, I got a real important question to ask you. When you do mustard on your socks.
Bro, the first interaction I had with the sheikh, I didn't really know, first time I was getting, quote unquote, practicing. I asked the sheikh, so sheikh, can you speak Arabic? And the guy was an Egyptian. That was my first interaction. First question. Now, I'll be honest with you.
It's not got any better.
And now, sorry to burst everyone's bubble, but what the world might deem as the most popular speaker in the world, when I see him, mashallah, I'm not going to name his name, but he'll take off the usual attire, whole patch out, solid stains on the t-shirt, slurping on tea. There's nothing because I know that he's a human being at the end of the day, and I'm old enough to understand that now.
So okay, would that affect you? Sorry, Altaf. Naveed, this particular sheikh who wears tea-stained t-shirts, which I'm sure is spiritually problematic. So would you prefer to have this image of this sheikh when you saw him on the minbar continuously, perpetually, or would you prefer to have known him like this from day one?
To be honest with you, Mufti Saab, it hasn't made much of an impact for either way. Reason being because the attire that he wears, I don't think that he genuinely believes that it's Islamic attire. He knows that this particular image will...
So it's a dress.
It's
fancy dress.
It's not... Well, you're trying to put words into my mouth here, Altaf.
No, I'm saying that because there's a thing in it with what you're saying is that I think
it's accepted by everyone.
But I think you see, but the difference with him is probably you're seeing consistency in his attitude and his behavior, whether it's online or offline.
Bang on.
See, and that's not problematic. The problematic part is not the attire that changes; is the person doesn't change. That's why it's fine. But when you get a person that's so next level on the minbar and then so next level on the ground, that's what causes the contradiction. So the question for you, Mufti, is how much of a persona or a facade do you have to put on, or do people feel that they have to put on when they become scholars? Do they feel that?
Let me tell you this. Let me tell you this. You're on my Twitter, on my social media, You know what kind of stuff I put on. I've got people contact me, say to me, I was told not to communicate with you because you wear clothes that are not befitting for ulama. Actually, guys came to me and then they were upset, as in, how come people are telling me this for? This shouldn't be an issue. And he goes, on your social media, once you put up this, that you're wearing this and no hat on your head, right? Yeah. What kind of... So he was there's certain people out there that want ulama to have a specific, limited, restricted way of, showing themselves how they are in society. Yeah. Now, you can disagree with me, that's up to you. But I personally think what tends to happen in that sense is people want ulama to be seen as being angelic or just close to angelic, right? And then the problem with this, big problem with this is that people can't live up to that. They find it very hard in a Western society, to be able to go to work in a jubba every day.
And you know what the funny thing is, Mufti Saab? You know what you're mentioning there, the person I'm referring to, they'd probably dress that particular way for public appearances because of that very same reason. And we've been in the most public of places, and when they wear normal attire, which they do, obviously, you'd be surprised that someone so popular and known globally isn't recognized by the public because they'll just never expect to see him in those clothes.
Yeah. There's a guy, you all know the Sheikh. He basically was in August, and a student came to me here. He goes, you know what? I saw Sheikh so and so in August. I couldn't believe it. He goes to August. Like he didn't understand that.
Now August comes to him on a flying carpet.
And this was before the days of August dropping things down your house.
Yeah.
And so I realized another incident. Someone actually contacted me and said, I stopped following you on Twitter because you used to put up these drawings of yours, and I thought to myself, how are you a scholar when you put drawings up? Like they imagined that a scholar has to put up certain types, like there's like a limited categories of things that scholars can put up on social media, and if they go outside of this,
that's where you don't become a person in it. Where they don't see you as a person, they've got this thing built up about people, but that's created from somewhere. Musab, it's not they've not created themselves as individuals.
Yeah.
That's been forced onto them by other people.
It
And normally
reminds me
it's
of-
influential people that are
And
is other scholars.
and it is
If you're honest,
it's a strain of dehumanization as well. If you think about it,
yeah, of course.
you're like dehumanizing an individual so much so that you're kind of like giving them an image which is not even naturally human.
I'll give you another I'll give you another example. I won't name the sheikh, but he cracked a famous joke that the area he comes from is probably so hardcore that as soon as he comes out the barbershop, he has to put his hat on.
Yeah.
Okay, I know what that is.
That's that part of the world is currently on lockdown, so we leave that part of the world. They have no internet access at the moment.
Yeah, but
So I'm sorry to pick out this question here, but I wanted to ask it again, sorry, because I feel a lot of people will probably want to know, but pledging allegiance to somebody in a spiritual manner, is there any evidence of doing so? And just, I mean, spiritually...
He's getting at Mufti Sab. He's one of those guys that you get at a talk in it. And when they ask you a question, they're like, but answer yes or no.
yeah,
It's a yes or no question.
I know
Stop
this
giving
kind
me
of guy.
fluffy answers.
I know this kind of guy.
Mufti Sahib knows what I mean. I mean, they come with a set of practices, which, like you say, like later on, they came about later on. I get it. I mean, the institutionalized version of it came later on. But is there any evidence for this? Is there any way we can?
Like I said, you can interpret this idea of the companions of the Prophet ﷺ being in the blessed company of the Prophet ﷺ. You can interpret this as being this sort of like inherited practice of like companionship. But if you look at it from purely from like a dalil point of view, like if you look at it from an evidence point of view, what you'll find, the Quran says something very straightforward. It just says be with the truthful people. That's it. Nowhere in the Quran is there like an instruction to give allegiance to anyone besides the Prophet ﷺ. But there is the emphasis on be with like good people, be with the pious. That idea of companionship, I think this is something which people tend to put this to one side and don't give this any importance, and they give the formalities importance. Yeah, so you have like, I remember a guy, this particular individual, Sheikh, he came to the UK and he gave a talk, and some guy came to me, he goes, I gave like allegiance to him, bayt to him. And I said, okay. I said, do you know him? He goes, no. I go, do you communicate with him? He goes, no. I go, so what was the whole point? He goes, no, everyone's giving it, so I thought I'd give it. It's spiritual. I said, it doesn't even make sense. Like, why would Islam tell you a famous individual who comes and gives a talk on a minbar, why would it be necessary for people to go to him and give him allegiance? It doesn't make sense. Like, you can get a drug dealer.
It's the way of allegiance as well, Mufti Sahib. It's the way of allegiance. It's like, I once at a mosque where, no, it wasn't that one. It was they all had hold of a white sheet, almost like a scarf or a rumal. Like they all were touching that, and then they were giving allegiance. Now, when you see stuff like that, that seems completely like, okay, I'm not sure what's going on here, because it's the actual, there might be something behind it, but it's the actual act of doing it. When you see it physically, you're like, oh, okay, what is happening here? Now, I've never seen that in a mosque before.
Yeah, so it goes back to the idea. It's not to say it's wrong. The idea is that, okay, if you consider this to be that kind of regime, like the 6 points I said, you got to have your hat on like this, and you got to wear a certain type of clothing, and okay, if you're gonna fit into that particular uniform, how to do things to achieve a certain thing that your sheikh experienced and he achieved it, and his sheikh experienced and he achieved it. So the idea is a tried and test method, right? And let's just carry on, and it works for them. If you don't want to do it, it's up to you. So I think this is where. So I think let's focus on the issue regarding losing Iman more. I think otherwise we're gonna go around in circles. Yeah, he's talking about.
Otherwise, Naveed's true colors are going to get revealed, and they're going to realize that Naveed isn't as balanced as he makes it out to be.
Naveed is balanced. No. I think it's an important topic here, but I think the switch to like losing your iman, I think it's slightly linked to some of this stuff, Mufsab, because what happens is the things that aren't written within faith, and that exist and that are kind of like neither here or there. Right, but they get conflated to faith. So like a routine, like the routine you're talking about, right? There would be other things like that within the religion that would push people away, that are like more culturally attuned, that are actually part of faith, right? But people make it as if they are, and they're so closely intertwined that you can't really divide the two. People find it very difficult to divide the two. So instead of dividing the two, they just pick up the whole box, put it on the side, and say, I don't want anything to do with that.
Plus,
so they do that with their culture, their ethnicity, and that. So like a Pakistani, Gujarati, Bangladeshi, whatever ethnicity they are, they just pick up everything with their faith inside this box and just put it on the side and say that, I'm not that guy.
Yeah, you throw the water. What's the saying? Throw the
baby in the bathwater.
Yeah, bathwater. I totally agree with that. I think this is where we have sometimes a conflation between culture and between these issues which are not per se Islamic, which can be omitted from a person's sort of like life, and still that person still is considered to be a fully fledged Muslim. But when there's like people out there who are promoting certain types of way of behaving as a Muslim, and promoting it so much as though this is considered to be, with your faith, you have to do like this. I think that's. I remember there was a guy, particular sheikh. I was basically going to get married here, and this particular rishta that came. So this lady, what she does is she contacts her sheikh. Her sheikh comes to my house. Yeah, sheikh comes to my house to kind of talk to me. So the sheikh said to me, he goes to me, have you given allegiance to anyone, like bayat to anyone? And I said, no. And he said, because if you had, it would have tweaked you. When I heard that, it just sounded so like cringy to me. I was thinking, I've studied 9 years here. And I don't want to boast to him I've studied 9 years. Like, it's not something to kind of... But I was thinking to her, I've studied 9 years. I've never come across this being like a key part of being a Muslim. That you have to affiliate yourself with a particular, spiritual sheikh. And so when I heard that, I just thought to myself, you know what, if I'm getting married to this woman and she's always going to be, back and forth with her sheikh, asking him, he's not doing this properly and he's not doing that, I was thinking, what's the point of this marriage? Yeah, and I think this is where people as well need to understand that when it comes to these kind of little issues, it can lead to people like not them losing faith, but other people losing faith because the way these people are behaving. Yeah, it could be anything. It could be like for example, Mawlid, for example, issue of Mawlid, Milad. Yeah, a lot of people ask me this question: what's your stance on Mawlid? And I tell them Mawlid's fine, totally fine. But the problem is when people are making it so specific, the definition of Mawlid, and they are clearly like excluding certain people from the faith because they don't, adhere to their understanding of the Mawlid, right? Mm-hmm. That's what troubles me. Because if you can say that now, why can't someone else stand up tomorrow with another aspect that they've understood to be key to Islam and then define the entire Muslim Ummah around those particular, factors, definitions?
It's just picking and choosing criteria as you feel or see fit.
Yeah, and I've seen guys like who have, alhamdulillah, some of them have come back to Islam. But I've seen guys who have left the faith totally and said, I don't want anything to do with this because this just seems to be like exactly what other faiths were doing in the past historically, where they were like, vilifying each other based upon, like these particular criteria, these, few points. And so I think losing faith is a bigger term. I think if you look in our society, losing faith is not black and white. Losing faith is gradient. There's like certain people out there who have this kind of like doubts now and again, and there's certain people out there who are just on the verge of just leaving everything if they haven't left it all, and they're just putting on the show as though they're Muslims, just so that people don't bother them.
Yeah.
Yeah, and I've spoken to people who've said to me they're ready to leave Islam. Yeah, and they said, and I've spoken to them, and I've said to them, look, end of the day, Hidayah in the hands of Allah. If you have any questions about Islam, I can answer those for you, but I can't guarantee that your faith is going to be intact. That's something between you and Allah. Yeah, the reason why you're getting doubts, that's between you and Allah. Allah is going to judge every person on the Day of Judgment, not like GCSE exams, where all the questions are the same. Allah is going to judge everyone, and the exams are going to be tailored, the questions are going to be tailored for that particular individual, his lifestyle, her lifestyle. You know, she doesn't wear a hijab. That doesn't mean that the one that wears hijab is better than the one that doesn't wear a hijab. Or he doesn't, have a beard. Doesn't mean the one that has a beard is better than this individual. It's like we have to understand what Allah is going to do on the Day of Judgment, and in the dunya what we're... So I think a lot of losing of faith is this conflation between adhering to a specific uniform of Islam, whereas it comes to the true reality of how people are judged in their faith. I think that's a separate thing.
Do you think, Mufti Saab, when you get them, what you call again, Facebook posts saying like and share this and if you love Allah, if you don't like and share them, do you think that makes you more likely to lose your faith?
I personally think it differs from person to person, really, honestly, because I look at my own relatives. Yeah, I look at my own relatives, and some of them put these kind of stuff up. Yeah. They kind of send me this kind of like messages, and 14 if you don't send it to 13
but
people.
They're happy, Mufti Saab. Have you noticed? They're like, Islam, like different. Like, I do miss that, that simple Islam.
Yeah.
Do you understand what I mean? Like, I'm trying to belittle anyone that has a more basic.
The Grandma Islam. We call it the Grandma Islam.
Grandma Islam. That's Grandma Islam. I think those people are probably more yaqeen than some people that probably studied for X amount of years. Because it's like a source of innocence, as opposed to I need to prove this to myself.
I've actually spoken to people, like sometimes I get shocked sometimes. Someone will come to me and ask me like a really kind of like intricate question about their particular situation. And I know I can give them this particular easy answer. Like, for example, maybe they're going through some personal issues, yeah? And they ask me a question, and the normal orthodox answer would be this, A. But I know in their situation, you can give B, C, and D. So I would say to them sometimes, by the way, you can take this opinion. In your situation, it would be valid for you to take it. The guy would turn around and say to me, you know what, Sheikh, I don't feel comfortable in my heart to take this opinion. I would rather, be in this situation, carry on for a few more years, than to take this opinion. And you think you think, you know what, it's like for me, I know that, from a scholarly point of view, these opinions are totally valid to take in that situation. But there's that guy, he seems to have something inside of him.
Is that piety or stupidity?
You could call it piety, you could call it stupid, but then it goes back down to the question, is how do we judge people? Like, for example, there were cases of Sahaba, some companions who were like, who gave everything they had in the path of Allah. They didn't have to. Mm-hmm. And then it was like Imam Ghazali, he says about Abu Bakr radiallahu anhu, he says, if someone was to follow Abu Bakr today and give all of his wealth, when the Prophet ﷺ told Abu Bakr and Umar to go home and bring some wealth. So when Abu Bakr radiallahu anhu goes home and he brings everything, and he says, what have you left at home? He goes, I've left Allah and His Messenger at home. So he says that if someone was to follow that today, he says most people will be sinful. Imam Ghazali says this. Most people will be sinful. And this is a guy who understands spirituality. He goes, the reason most people will be sinful is because they are not doing it because it's based upon the true, honest, genuine state of their faith. He says most of them are going to be doing it because at the spur of the moment, the emotion that they're going through, they're just doing it for that. And he goes, later on, they would have so much regret that they gave up all their house and their wealth and everything for the sake of Allah. They would regret so much that they would actually feel like they might even say something which was blasphemous. So it's like, it's difficult to kind of say in these kind of situations. It's difficult to say, well, you know what, you're stupid, you should take this opinion. Or you know what, this is the more intelligent opinion. That's what I was saying to you early on. That, you see the spectrum. There's certain individuals on social media who have rationalized Islam so much that it just seems like a regimental sort of like, set of instructions. It's all about instructions. But you clearly can see there is a difference between like following instructions and following Islam. It's like there's some spiritual sort of like element behind it, which we can't describe as being faith, taqwa, or consciousness in Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala, that gives this kind of a different depth, you can say. So you get all flavors of Muslims.
No, I think that's interesting. I think one of the things that came up yesterday, I was doing this online course. At the moment, I'm doing this Salah course online, which one of my friends kind of made up. It's called Transform My Prayer, and he was kind of like in his first module, he was just going over the fact that he's talking about quality and quantity of actions, and then he went to the verse of Surah Mulk as well, and he was just talking about how that talks about it's about the best of action. So I think that when you're talking about Musab, like, it's not about doing all of these things, it's about what quality you're actually doing as well. And I think what you're referring to in the one of the things that's always that I went through myself in kind of like my own experiences, that whole regimented style of living and trying to do certain things, and then kind of understanding and being at ease with relaxing around some of these rules. And not relaxing in the sense that you just don't follow any of these rules, but just relaxing in the way that you understand that actually I'm part, or I'm thinking in the way that a cult would think. Right? And then sometimes you're stepping out and thinking, well, actually this and this and this and this exist, and all of these other opinions exist, and actually it is just about finding people that you know and understand that have some form of piety. And I think that that part of it is very subjective. That's why people follow all sorts of people, because they follow people that they're comfortable with. Right? So if you can find somebody, that's the truth. And it's like, for me, I was speaking to a sheikh yesterday, and I there's only a few scholars that I get really excited about speaking to, and they're not like big names or anything. Apart from Mufti Liaquat, and it was a big name, and it got 50,000 subscribers.
I need to, in the background, I need to get my name there, I think.
I think you need to get a YouTube counter, subscription counter, book yourself. Have you on in the background. But I think like when there's certain scholars that you get excited about speaking to, because they will always enhance your understanding of Islam in some way. Like, you won't be even talking to them about religion, but somehow you will gain from them spiritually. Like,
so what I'm thinking loud now here, you're a kind of person who would, like, you kind of become like spiritually nourished, you can say, by understanding like aspects in Islam, like understanding them, rather than being an individual that is told to do certain things. I don't think you can do it. I'm confused as to how somebody would do things like tadabbur and tafakkur on their faith without actually thinking about it. Or being like, if you have kids, or you have animal, like I've got a kitten now, she's not here at the moment, but I'll send you some pictures. You look like a totally different guy with a kitten.
Alhamdulillah. My kitten is my best friend at the moment.
Well, you reach that age now where the kitten now is like.
I got another one coming as well, so I got two of them, inshallah.
Oh, by the way, my cat's having kittens, yeah?
Is it?
Yeah, it's gonna have kittens soon.
Some free ones coming.
So Naveed, if you want to buy some £500 kittens.
I'm alright, Mufti Sal. I'm alright. I want to take the heat and give his cat some company.
Yeah. So so there's, you're saying that, Musab, about the thinking part of it. Is that, do you get nourished by being told? I don't think I would, and I think that's the thing that you become you resist almost. Like, I got to a point in my life where I was just thinking to these. I was like, I'm not listening to these guys anymore. That's it. So I'd still go to the same mosques. I'd still go to the same things, but I would just not gain as much of an appreciation from those circles. And I
interesting.
Think that people go through those changes, and sometimes in those changes they lose a bit of faith. But I think you can enhance your faith at that moment as well.
Once you're talking about this, it's interesting. I was once in Coventry once, and I was in this. Were you with us? I think Altaf, you were with us, isn't it? We went to that guy's house, remember? And he was telling us about his sister studies, and the sheikh. The sheikh tells him that
You're doing an event with me, man.
yeah, that was so funny. And like the guy was like shocked. He goes, basically the sheikh, the teacher, tells them that the wife is not allowed to put her coat on. Was it on top of her husband's coat?
Yeah. On top of another.
So the wife cannot put her coat on top of the husband's coat, and the wife cannot sit in the passenger seat next to her husband in the car. She has to sit at the back. So I understood this kind of thing. This like, if anyone has ever said it in this kind of sense, it's not said in a Islamic sense of it. It's said in a more like a cultural. Many of these kind of like things that people say, it's more of a cultural thing. My grandfather, when he was alive, he used to walk 1 mile ahead of my grandma. You'd never see him walk parallel with my grandma, right? And she would also walk, maybe he was a bit faster than her anyway. But it's more of like a cultural thing. And then when people kind of confuse this to be Islamic, where the woman has to be behind, and it's like they're trying to look at it in the form of salat. Well, the woman stands at the back in salat, so shouldn't she be walking behind the husband in the park? And and the seat, the passenger seat. Well, the trick around that is make sure you tell her to pull the seat a bit back, a few notches back, and pull his one up in front.
I'm sure there's people that do that and think that's spiritually correct because it's showing a level of respect or something.
And that's the other thing I was going to talk about, which was the issue of where do you draw the line in respect being something which is like determining your level of faith. Like you see someone going into a sheikh. I remember this happens a lot. There's like there'd be like someone there's a famous sheikh, and a guy who know him so well go up to him and call him by his first name, and grab his hand and hug him, and and everyone else thinking, how are you doing this? This is the sheikh. You're not supposed to do that. You're supposed to wait in line. You're supposed to look down at him, not look in his eyes. You're supposed to. And the guy saying, oh, I can't bother this man. Just give salam to the guy. So it's like weird how people kind of, I don't know. Anyway, Naveed, you had something to say. What were you saying?
Realized so many times, Mufti Sahib, wallah.
Seriously?
Yeah, man. Where people are like, and it doesn't just happen amongst cultures that probably practice more tasawwuf. It happens in the opposite end of the spectrum as well, where
What's the opposite end? No tasawwuf.
The robotic. Is this some like robotic
is it the
sect in Islam
or something like that?
Yeah.
The AI.
Yeah.
So
people are like that. I've got a question for you, Mufti Sahib, a slightly bit unrelated. Yeah, me and Ricky and Umar Zaman and Brother Maruf are actually discussing this. At what stage does a person studying Islam go from brother to ustad to sheikh? Like,
I can answer that one for you. Yeah, very easy. It's depending on how many quotes you put up.
Allah.
Yeah. You put up that's what I said to you. I am actually coming out with a way that can teach people how to become an online, like a spotlight sheikh. And I think the reason I'm saying this is because I want people to realize it's not magical. Like a lot of people out there who are famous speakers, it's not a like kind of like a deserved status that a lot of people get. It's not a deserved, and it's a natural way that people become famous. Just like celebrities, if Mo Salah tomorrow turned around and start giving people fatwas, and how many people out of his subscribers, Muslim subscribers, would actually take what he says seriously? Think about it. Honestly, think about it. Many would. Yeah, if he starts saying, this is how you should practice Islam, this is how I pray, people would follow how he prays. Not because he's right or wrong. It's simply because
he has followers.
That's it.
Algorithms these days, somebody could be good at that, and that's it.
Yeah, and that's the scary thing. If AI, if they can create an AI that can actually manipulate human, like kind of characteristics, and they can manipulate the ideal sheikh, and this has been done by some secret organizations.
where they answer certain queries because of keywords being brought up and stuff. Yeah, we've seen this.
And it's happened like, in the past where people have figured out, like they do PhDs on these things. They're not silly people out there, intelligent people who do a whole PhD on how the Tablighi Jamaat works. They've done PhDs on how communication between, Tasawwuf tariqas work, how, masjids run. They know these things. When I was stopped in the airport so many times, they used to bring guys to interview me that when I would say something, they would immediately know exactly what I'm talking about. Like it's as though these guys have thoroughly kind of read all the books on this issue. And I think that's what we fall behind. We think that just because a particular sheikh is at a particular, status, he gets this. So it's a very tricky. I think, I don't know. I mean, I don't know how far it's gonna go now, because now the problem is like, you can say for in the 90s sheikhs, the early 2000 sheikhs were to some degree more genuine in the way that masjids would only recognize you as a sheikh, and they would give you the platform, and then by them giving you the platform, you got accrediting automatically. Now what's happened is, because social media is just an open platform, anyone can actually come on the scene now. So you can get a guy who basically just does like a few quotes, puts them up regularly, answers people's questions, and you'll get people underneath asking him fatwas, and
Yeah.
and then he could be just like what they called
I was gonna say, you get people like Altaf who answer them.
What they called predators, spiritual predators.
Is Altaf a brother or an ustad? I don't think he's hit the sheikh status. Are you a brother or an ustad?
I'm brother man.
Yasin is saying, wa alaikum assalam. Make dua for my teacher Sheikh Siraj Hendricks, who passed away today due to COVID-19. Inna lillahi wa inna ilaihi raji'un. May Allah give him Jannat al-Firdaus. One of my students as well today, his father is in really bad condition in Malaysia, and he's basically having this treatment in his brain, but he's losing consciousness, like he can't recognize his family anymore. So the doctors have decided now that they're going to stop treating him anymore now. So he was just like kind of saying to me that, can you make dua that Allah subhanahu gives him shifa. And he says this is the sad reality is, you realize the status of your parents later on. So many times I've seen this with people that will say, if only I had realized the status of my parents before. And it just like hits you. You realize that, what, time is so short. We're going to leave this world one day, but it's like, how do you make this, the time that you have, how do you make it effective? How do you give it value? And the brother was a bit upset as well. So may Allah give his father shifa and give sabr to the family as well. That's the tough times that we're living at the moment. And this is one of the things that it's just strange. It's just one of the things where people can lose their faith. Because I remember when my granddad had cancer, and I used to make so much dua to Allah. I said, Ya Allah, please give him shifa. I was thinking to myself, I've studied all the Quran, I've studied all the du'as, and I've studied all the hadith, and I'm thinking to myself, there must be one dua here that will cure him. And I kept on trying everything, and it just like in the end, when nothing worked, and like I saw him, like I was there when he breathed his last, I just thought to myself, this is what life is all about. This old man who was in his 80s, he lived his entire life, and this is the last moment. That's the khulasa, the summary of what we're all about. We're going to leave this world. And it just like, at that moment, someone can just make the decision that, what happened? Why didn't God help me? I tried so hard. God, I asked you so much time. But it's just like, it's difficult. How do you explain to someone? I remember Sheikh Hamza Zotis, he gave a talk once, and he was talking about why people leave Islam. And he said, he goes, sometimes, if there's a father and has lost his child at a young age, right? He goes, it doesn't matter how much logical delees, proofs you give him about the existence of God, and God is in control of everything, and God's the most merciful. He goes, you can't logically explain to him why his child passed away. You can't explain the wisdom of Allah here, why Allah has taken them. And he goes, if this person, and that's why I said earlier on, Allah judges people according to their situation. There could be a person that's so broken inside, you can't get into them. And that person might live their entire life in a way that if you judged it from the outside and you had the fatwa book and your pen out, you would have quickly just written their name down in a certain column. Yeah? Mm-hmm. But you don't know that what they're going through and how Allah on the Day of Judgment is going to judge that person. Allah is the judge. So I think it's
Adding to what you said there, Mufti Saab, I remember somebody else. I can't remember who we were sitting with. They were discussing the same thing, and they said something like, "Look at the way the Prophet ﷺ dealt with someone that urinated in the masjid." And like obviously the Prophet ﷺ said, like I know, I can't remember word for word, but he said, "I know my camel better than you do," or something along those lines. And it goes, that was the status of the Prophet ﷺ. So imagine how Allah is going to be just with you. And we were just sitting there scratching our heads thinking, yeah, man, that's deep.
yeah.
I know I haven't done a great job explaining it, but you understand where I'm trying to come from.
No, you're right. Totally, and it's just one of those difficult ones when people want advice from me in these kind of. I become like, to be honest, I become emotional in these kind of things. Like, I mean, when someone like, talks to me about certainly a relative passing away or what should they do, I don't know what to say to them. Like, which ayah do I quote? Which hadith do I quote? It's not really gonna change the state of their heart.
Do you think that's something to do with like bereavement counselling and stuff?
Bereavement counselling, yeah, I think that is something that it's like, I think there's a basic level of bereavement that Muslims should know how to deal with things. Like we say to people, "Inna lillahi wa inna ilaihi raji'un." We visit them. We
I always say that when my mother passed away, and I was at the graveyard, and one of my friends came up to me and he said, "Allah ni marzi, bro." And I looked at him because I'm not Pakistani, so I looked at him and I went, "Who else's choice was it?" Like that's what immediate thought went through my mind, is that, why are you saying that to me? But then I understood afterwards is that that's their way of consoling somebody. Like they don't have any words to say, so they just say those words.
Yeah.
As a method of consoling somebody. But I think that the other problem that you have is that when a scholar comes out of a Darul Uloom, or a scholar appears and transforms from a Ustadji to a scholar in whatever process takes place nowadays, they're expected to have all of these qualifications. They're expected to be good at bereavement. They're expected to be good at counseling people. Like you had that person on YouTube as well. Like, people expect all the answers from them, and I think that becomes a problem as well, especially when we know that they don't have most of those answers.
Yeah, and I am the worst person. Yeah, I'm the worst person to, to console someone in situations. Alhamdulillah, over the years now, I've started to become better at it. Yeah? But you know what? Like, I come out with the most blunt responses. I'm the worst person, in WhatsApp messages. I tell you now, I'm the worst person in WhatsApp messages. If you send me a long, sad story about your life situation, and you want me to read it and respond in the in the measured way, I'm the wrong guy. My response will most likely be like a kind of fixed, like on WhatsApp when you press those kind of what are they called, suggested words. So you just press salam and then you press the next word and the next word and the next word and the next word and full stop.
Now, can you read what my WhatsApp message says?
Don't WhatsApp me, because just about, bro.
Don't WhatsApp me. It's like an email address that gets too much spam. I'm not hunting for your message. Nothing personal. That's it. I've told everybody I don't respond on WhatsApp. If you get a response, you should be happy.
Yeah.
It's just like all of it's just like junk mail now. Everything, your WhatsApp, your Facebook, your Instagram, your whatever you're posting on, is just all like too much effort to respond to everybody.
Yes.
Now if someone texts me, that's the only time I'll probably check it, because text message is so uncommon now that when I get a text message, I'll be like, ooh, must be important.
Yeah. So
Now look at my text messages.
Oh, mashallah. You're popular, guy.
No, those are stacked up for the last few months. I don't even respond on text messages anymore. I just become elusive.
When I don't check Eid messages near Eid time.
Oh yeah. That's a difficult one.
I switch my phone off in the morning. It drains the battery. There's no point doing that.
Yeah.
I think the one group that I'm on is a halal. There's a halal barbecue group that Yahya started. Haludi Foodie started in it. Oh my gosh! Them guys. You think I talk about food a lot? I have been put to shame. I will wake up in the morning, Nav, go to sleep at 12 o'clock or after Fajr, even at 1:30, right? And these guys will have had 700 messages about food between 1 o'clock in the morning and 6 o'clock in the morning.
Whoa.
Brothers, seek help.
I tell you, this guy contacted me. Yeah, this guy contacted me. He goes to me, Sheikh, can I have your WhatsApp number? And every time someone says that to me, can I have your WhatsApp number? I'm thinking, my heart starts beating. Yeah. Because I'm thinking to myself, please, I've got enough people that contact me here. So one thing I don't answer is private phone calls. Never ever answer private phone calls. Yeah, in my whole life, I probably answered 3 private phone calls, and those are probably, when you order something and you give your number, and then like the company sometimes contacts you on a private number or something.
Yeah.
So I'd never answer private. So this guy contacts me. He goes, "Can I have your WhatsApp?" And I go, "Why?" I have to come out with like a valid reason. Like it's not enough to say to people, "I don't want to give you." You have to come out with some valid reason why you don't want them to have it, and people get offended. Like if
My
you
mum
say,
said I can't share my number with anybody.
if you say to someone, "Look, it's okay if I don't give you. I don't want to give you my number," they get offended. Like, why don't I'm your Muslim brother? Or why are you not giving me your number for? Like they see, and a lot of the kind of people that will want the WhatsApp number is like people from like Pakistan and India and these kind of places.
I get the same thing, Mufti Saab. Not for Islamic questions though, but for charity stuff. People will message me, "Oh, we need help with this, that." I go, "Bro, there's a proper channel of doing everything. I will contact the organization and the admin email." "No, but you've just responded to my message, so you already know about my situation. Give me your phone number. I'll talk to you. I'll tell you properly."
Yeah,
I'm like, "Bro, I've never met you in my life. Why am I going to give you my number?"
yeah.
Then, guess what happens? They'll start calling me through Facebook.
Block and delete, bro.
Yeah.
Block and delete. I
Delete
just
it, bro.
direct them to wherever you can direct them, and then just say,
Yeah, I
I
think
can't
that's-
help you, unfortunately.
Yeah, so this guy, let me tell you, this guy contacted me, and then I said, "Look, I prefer not to give my phone numbers to people, and one reason is, you don't know who you're giving phone number to, and people taking your identity and
You
all that
know
kind of
me?
stuff."
I'm calling you.
And then guy goes to me, he goes, "No, what I want is, I want to add you to," he goes, the guy goes, "I want to add you to a group where you answer people's questions for them." And I was thinking, come to my WhatsApp, I'm already doing that.
Wow. He thought that you've never thought of the idea of being in a WhatsApp group and answering loads of people's questions. So
wow.
all of his friends are going to be on this group, and he's going to add you, and you're going to answer questions for everyone.
Exactly. And I understand the guy. The guy, he doesn't understand. He's not been through this, so he's like, I've reached like a certain distance in this. So through experience, I know exactly how all this works. And he's at the beginning of it, and he thinks every sheikh is just passionate about answering people's questions. It's like every sheikh wakes up in the morning going, "Where's all the questions? Where's the conflicts? Where's the questions? Where's the?"
I got no purpose to live. I'm going back to sleep.
I heard your cereal is shaped as question marks, Mufti sir.
You know me.
I need
I
Cheerios and 3 questions.
oh, my heart, the questions.
Can I
Dil.
can I have Mufti Sahib goes to his wife, he goes, "Where's the toothpaste and the 4 questions?"
No, the guy falls on the ground. The doctor comes and goes, "Yeah, wake up." Questions.
Oh gosh, man.
Wow.
I don't know how you do it, Mufti Sahib.
Mufti
Yeah.
sir, you know when you answer a question with a question, do people get really irritated?
No, I used to do that. Bit. There's 2 things. Yeah, I'll tell you. There's 2 things. Well, I'll tell you one thing. Not 2 things. The one thing that I stopped doing, which was like sarcastic kind of answers.
Okay.
I stopped giving sarcastic answers because I realized, a lot of
You should
people.
do it on Twitter. You can become famous.
Yeah, there's a few scholars I know
The
who
one scholar.
who are
That
experts in.
scholar's hilarious. That's not even a scholar account. That's just a parody account, man.
I don't know. He's gone nowadays. So yeah. So it's just like I think a lot of people they're very honest people and they want answers, but the problem is like you said, they don't know the protocol of things. Like they assume.
Mufti Sahib said, finish the sentence off in my head where Mufti Sahib goes, a lot of people they want answers and I don't want to answer their questions.
That's true as well.
So now he's longing it out and talking about a process.
Yeah, that's true as well. But yeah, I mean,
a mufti to not answer questions.
Yeah, that's the reality of things. Every person in their own sort of like position wherever they are in society, they have to be prepared for the potential things that they can be faced with. When I get questions, the first thing I tell people, look, if it's about marriage, if it's about divorce, I don't deal with them. And mostly 90% of the questions are about marriage, about divorce. Yeah, and I tell people, look, and they can't understand why are you not, like they don't understand how comes you're not an expert in this. So I'm thinking to myself, like, how am I? Why would I have to be an expert in this? So they don't understand how learning knowledge works. So they assume anyone with a title of Maulana and Mufti and this means that they are an expert in any question you ask them. Like they're like walking, talking Googles, basically. So yeah.
We exposed Mufti Saab on his
So
own
guys,
channel.
I've been exposed.
He does a live question and answer session. That
I will
he
now
doesn't
change my
like to
name.
make.
One viewer is going to be like FaceTime this week.
I'm gonna call myself Abu something. I'm Abu something.
Oh, subhanallah.
Yeah. Anyway, I think we should wrap it up there. So okay, so last kind of thoughts on spirituality losing. I think this is a topic maybe we need to discuss later on in the year maybe, and bring someone on maybe who can who's got experience with this idea of dealing with people who are, leaving Islam, ex-Muslims as well, is like something that we need to talk about, because it is, the numbers of people who are ex-Muslim are growing. Not necessarily bring an ex-Muslim on, but we can talk to people who have dealt with these kind of situations. I know, like, parents sometimes contact me and say, my daughter's leaving Islam, what should I do? And then, or like, my son's, said that he has nothing to do with Islam. I got an email once from someone saying, my uncle, he rejects, Islam. He says these filthy things about the Prophet ﷺ. What do I do in this situation? And these are like real life people. They don't know how to deal with it. And I mean, personally, I don't know how to deal with it. Like, how do you deal with someone who, is blasphemous, is openly insulting Allah and the Quran and Islam? What do you do in this situation? Do you kind of just say, well, just give them, let them speak of whatever they want, free, everyone's got their free kind of like, I don't know. Yeah, so the problem seems to be is that if someone, for example, doesn't like something in Islam or leaves Islam, the family don't know how to react to it. Like that cultural sort of like way that they've structured their own version of Islam, right? It's like, how was it ever possible? We thought this was so waterproof, this way of our, and how was it possible that this guy has left the fold of Islam? And that's where I think the discussion needs to go with this idea of balancing. So anyway, now have you got anything to?
No, I was just going to make a sarcastic comment, but then I realised that that's just a bit insensitive, so I'll just stay quiet.
Allah, these podcasts are making you a different person, bro. This is your Islah.
Being spiritual, brother.
Yeah. So out of Altaf and me, who is your sheikh then? Who is your spiritual, you're going to give allegiance to?
I'm just trying to decide if Altaf is brother or Saab.
I just about get brother at the moment, bro. On a good day, I get brother. Otherwise, I get uncle if I'm unlucky. Well, I was going to say, one of the episodes that I think would be really interesting to do is people that have changed their within the faith. So they're not left the faith, but they've moved within the faith on a spectrum. Because I think it's really interesting that you get like some people that are really hardcore when they're younger, right? And then they become a bit,
mellow down.
Chilled out as they grow older. They mellow down, and the question is why they mellow down. Because I think they can share a lot of their learnings with people that are like really, really staunch. Like, you could say to them, if you search my Facebook account 5 years ago, it looks exactly like yours does now.
Yeah.
But the process that I've been through is X, Y, and Z, and it might help people to kind of like, broaden their horizons a little bit.
Yeah. And the opposite. I was watching this documentary today. Have you heard of something called astroturfing? It's like the opposite of grassroots movements. Have you heard of that? So
Okay.
basically,
No.
So what it is grassroots movements historically have always started based upon like genuine concerns of the community, right? So astroturfing, like the word implies, that it's like a fake grassroots. Astroturfing, they call it. So what organizations and companies do is if they want to kind of like water down the voice of the others, they come out with the other argument and they make it sound so legitimate, the movement, that people stop listening. So a lot of tobacco companies in the US, they started this. So when the grassroots movement started against lung cancer and these kind of arguments against tobacco, they actually started their own one in support of tobacco, of how important, and they made it sound so legitimate. And they got paid a lot of people. But the idea with this new concept that's coming out, which is the astroturfing, I think that's something interesting which might actually, you're going to see in social media a lot, where people will deliberately try to come out with a reactionary group, which is fake, just simply in order to, water down the other people's argument. So I don't know, maybe I'm thinking too ahead here,
Well, it's
guys.
interesting. I like that whole thing. I'm on the Wikipedia page reading about it now. AstroTurfing, because quite a few people do that where they claim that they have legitimacy on the ground. So they'll go to speak to somebody and they say, "Well, where do you come from?" And they're like, "Oh yeah, I come from this organization and we represent this many people." And really, they don't. They say we represent 400 masjids or 100 masjids or 200 masjids or whatever they say, and really, like, they're just like 200 house mosques. But it sounds like it's interesting with stuff. I'll have a look at that though. I think we come to a natural close now with sub midnight.
Jazakallah khair, guys, for all of your viewing, participation. May Allah reward all you guys. Inshallah, we will see you guys next time. Yes, Uldu Kapatta saying got a new chair. So yeah, I did get a new chair. It's actually damaged. So they're gonna send the replacement part, which is basically, this is called a stool. It's called a stool office chair. So a stool office chair is basically one of those high ones where your feet can't reach the ground. Yeah, so it's like, you have this sort of like platform underneath, ring.
I thought you were the height where none of your feet touch the ground on any chair.
I used to be at one time. Yeah. I know, in fact, this is actually more comfortable. Like when your feet are up, it's considered to be more ergonomic. Yeah, for your posture.
Mine is not. Yeah.
Because they say your lower back part of your back, the weight should be put onto that. The lower back. That's where, and you're not supposed to put you're not supposed to sit like a full S shape. Yeah, that's not good for you. It's putting too much stress on the lower, around the cervix. So it's actually,
for the first time in my life, we've just started working from home. I've actually got a pillow on my chair.
Yeah, that's a
I've
good
never
one.
ever had a pillow on my chair before.
Yeah, that's a good one. So the one that I've got is like this. It's basically like it's a bit of one of those. It's kind of like net ones.
Ah.
Yeah.
It's broken. Your subscribers are proper loyal, man.
Yeah, so they're all aware. They all know all my like.
He understood the chair moved. Mufti Sahab, how come you changed your light bulb today? It's looking a little bit brighter.
Anybody want to donate? I'm sat on the floor. I don't have a chair. I like you guys.
Yeah, man, you need to up your kit, bro.
Actually, this chair was from. This is the only chair I could find. This is actually from. It's a company from Germany, but they've got a depot in London.
What's it called?
HGH.
Okay.
HGH Office Furniture.
This is the chair I bought when I first joined the charity sector and I started working at home. I thought I need a home office.
It's like the CEO ones, man. It's like the proper.
This is
where you fire
proper,
people. You fire,
Yeah. You're
This is
fired.
this is a somewhat religious podcast, so I thought that doing the religious thing, sitting on the floor, obviously proven from all the books. That's what I do.
Oh, where's your book that you always quote? It must be in there. the divine, what's it? I keep forgetting the name.
I think I'm going to get a green screen Mufti Sahab and put books there. Just so that I look like...
Library, don't put a library of Alexandria.
Wait, I might be able to put a background on here. Let me just see if this works now.
Yeah, you can put like kind of blur your background as well, can't you?
Alright.
Whoa.
Whoa.
Oh yeah. You look a bit. You look at insect now in the grass.
Oh, this one's quite cool actually.
This was spiritual. This was spiritual halo.
This looks like one of those Indian movies.
Looks like you're there,
You know when people used to get married.
Yeah.
And back in the 80s, and they used to show this kind of filter.
Yeah.
Put your hand like you're touching. Put your hand like you're leaning on the tree, bro.
Yeah. It looks like that guy who kind of monies. Remember that guy, the monies. Oh, what's that guy, man? He comes on YouTube. Funny, he does phone calls to people, prank phone calls.
Phone jacker or face
Yeah,
jacker.
and he goes that monies. I've got my monies in there, and we need to clean out your bank account because there's pigeons in there.
This one's quite good though, because the wind's blowing in the background, isn't it?
Yeah.
So it just looks like it's moving, and it looks like it's actually. I'm just on the I moved to start today. I thought I'd podcast from the
Bahamas. Anyway, guys, jazakallah khair, guys. Take care, inshallah. We will see you guys next time. Assalamu alaikum wa rahmatullahi wa barakatuhu.